Welcome, everyone, to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight, we're going to talk about the latest strategy to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. It is called Identify, Test, and Trace. Identify, test, and trace. And I'm going to break down what those things mean. Part of it is to reopen the economy, where people are going to be going back out into the world. And this is a very scary time. Most states right now, and I say most because there are still some holdouts, but most states right now are on a stay-at-home order until May or May-ish. We're until May 5th. But what we do as a whole or as individual states will depend on whether or not we are flattening that curve and seeing our numbers flatten out and or decrease, and especially the number of deaths decrease. But when they reopen the economy, like they have done so in other countries like Singapore and South Korea and China, there's going to have to be a way of ensuring that we don't have another spike in the spread of the virus, and that we inevitably will see more cases when people are out of quarantine. So how do we isolate those? It's first identify. And we'll have to have a lot of things in place in order to be able to identify cases. And then we have to be able to test people, both people that have symptoms for the COVID and then hopefully the antibodies, so people can figure out if they've already had it. And our ability to test across the board is going to be very important. And finally, trace contact. So tracing where people have been and having a unified system that we can use that tracks that data and lets everyone else know what's going on, so that, for example, if you were just at the Hornbachers or your local Piggly Wiggly or whatever your grocery store is called, and somebody there just tested positive for COVID, everybody that was recently there would get an alert telling them the place where you were just at had a contagious person in it. So now get back in your house and quarantine so that you don't further spread the virus, because you may begin to exhibit symptoms in short order. So we're going to cover all of that, bring you the updates on what's happening nationally, locally, and around the globe with the coronavirus here on A Mexican Crossing Lines. But first, I want to thank all of you who have been sending me your questions, your concerns, your commentary, your topics. All of it is very much appreciated. We really couldn't do what we do as a community radio station without the support of everyone out there. So, folks, please support us on our social media platforms. Like, share, and donate to your local community radio station.
That's right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. You can get a hold of us. In fact, you want to give us a call and give us a message. You can talk about the program or anything you want. You can leave a 3-minute message on 701-566-0917. Again, it's 701-566-0917. You can also email Cindy at kpppfm.com or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. You can also tweet us at media_PPP. Find us on Facebook at 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead, the People's Press Project of Mexi-Can. Now, if you go to our website, you can find us at kpppfm.com, and I've been putting all the shows and of all the shows from Mexican Crossing Line, plus other content on there. I'm behind about a week, but I'll get that stuff done very soon. It's kpppfm.com. If you'd like to donate to our nonprofit organization, go to kpppfm.com/donate, and it's tax deductible. And we appreciate the support. We appreciate you watching, and we want you to stay safe out there.
Yes, we definitely want you to stay safe, which is why we're doing these daily shows, bringing you updates, looking for all of the information out there that we can to keep you up to date on the latest. Every day we're learning something new. And Duke and I, we sit around and listen to press conferences from the president to all of the, state governments. We're trying to get the most pertinent, up-to-date information so we can report it here on our local radio station. And I want to start off looking at the world numbers, where we are right now. This is April 10th. And we are globally now at 1,691,719 cases and 102,525 deaths. It's a very sad number. We're over 100,000 deaths globally. We are over 5,800 deaths in New York alone, in the city of New York alone. Yes, it's very troubling. And nationally, let's take a look at our numbers here in the U.S. We are over 500,000 cases now. We weren't even there when we were capturing this for the show, but we are at 501,880 cases as of this very moment. 18,699 deaths here in the U.S. with 239 people that have recovered.
Boy.
The cases just keep
going up,
climbing. Yeah. We have 54,000 plus cases in New Jersey, 22,000 plus cases in Michigan, 20,000 plus cases in Massachusetts, over 20,000 cases in California. Over 20,000 in Pennsylvania. We're nearly at 20,000 in Louisiana, Florida, Illinois. Texas just broke the 10,000 mark. They're at 12,000 plus. Georgia just broke the 10,000 mark. They're at 11,000 plus. Connecticut broke the 10,000 mark. They're over 10,000 now. And where are we in Minnesota?
Well, we have less numbers, we have less people, but in Minnesota we have 1,242 positive tests, but there's been 50 deaths. Current positive cases are 567 and recovered 675, and there's still 145 people in the hospital. Now, a little bit closer to home, the county we live in, Clay County in Minnesota, there's been 23 positive cases. Now, in North Dakota, there's two people actually died yesterday, so it brings their death toll up to 6. There were 18 new cases in the past day, bringing the statewide total to 269 cases, and 101 are considered recovered. Now, in Cass County, that's the county that's close to us, where Fargo is, there's 83 cases.
Wow.
Okay, add up that to the 50. That's 123 cases just in the area that we live in. Just in our region here. In Minnesota, we're not the most populated area, but in Fargo, we're the most populated area. In fact, our community is the largest metropolitan area between the Minneapolis area and Spokane, Washington.
That's correct. We are rural, but we're also
urban.
The largest metropolitan area. And the governor of North Dakota is using the fact that we're not a densely populated state as sort of a shield against the concern that we are going to have a high number of contagion or a high number of deaths. And while I am also hopeful that is the case, I think that the best bet for everyone is to use social distancing and to stay at home if your state is requiring you to do so.
Well, here's a slogan: bring it down and stay around.
Yeah, bring it down and stay around. And by the way, happy Holy Friday? No, you guys don't call it Holy
They
Friday. You
say
call it
Good
Good
Friday.
Friday.
Yes.
Happy Good Friday. In Mexico,
Yeah,
I
happy
was just
Good
talking
Friday.
to one of my students, Spanish students today, and I said, in Mexico, we say Holy Friday. And we have Easter just around the corner. I know that Passover just came and went, and it's tough because we haven't been able to have those family celebrations, those traditional things, and there's a lot of different ways that we can still share with each other, share meals with each other, share conversations with each other. I see a lot of people doing virtual happy hours on
Oh, yeah.
Zoom and on social media. Later on, I'm going to be sharing a recipe that I made today. So there's ways that you can continue to connect with people in the world and in your family and share of yourselves, and also, shorten the distance between yourself and your loved ones with social media. One of the ways in which American Family Insurance is helping people in the United States is by sending out rebates to all of their vehicle customers.
Policyholders.
Yes.
Yeah, they did this also. There was another insurance company actually started doing this, and the reasoning behind it is that there's less people on the road. There's been less claims and accidents, and so what American Family announced today that they're going to give everybody $50 relief on their policies. And my insurance agent, I happen to have American Family Insurance. Our insurance agent sent out an email today and said, "Quit calling us about the $50." Seemed real irritated. And explained it all, saying, yes, you'll get $50 for each vehicle you have insured. We're going to mail the checks. They're coming from corporate. Don't call us about it. They're going to go to the address that you're at where your insurance bill goes to. If you moved, we're not going to forward it. No, we can't do direct deposit. It's going to be a check. It's going to go out in a couple of weeks. And I was like, well, thank you. But it's like another large insurance company has done the same thing. So it's a little bit of relief, and American Family spending $200 million in these sorts of rebates.
Now, I want to share a sentiment from our future, from the future. This actually is a post by an Italian writer named is her name Anush? Francesca.
There we go.
Francesca Melandri. And Francesca Melandri, she lives in Rome. She's in lockdown in Rome. And as you know, the European countries are weeks ahead of us in terms of this pandemic and what happens in it. And so when they write to us from the future of what our lives are going to look like or what they could look like, I think it's pertinent for us to listen. And I was really impressed with the writing of this particular Italian woman. I wanted to share it with you. She says, I'm writing to you from Italy, which means I'm writing from your future. We are now where you will be in a few days. The pandemic charts show us all intertwined in a parallel dance. But we are a few steps ahead of you in the pain of time, just like Wuhan was a few weeks ahead of us. We watch you as you behave just as we did. You hold the same arguments we did until a short time ago, between those who will say it's only a flu, what's all the fuss, and those who have already understood. As we watch you from here, from your future, we know that many of you, as you were told to, locked yourselves up in your home, quoted Orwell or even Hobbes, but soon you'll be too busy for that. First of all, you'll eat. Not just because it will be one of the last few things that you can still do. You'll find dozens of social networking groups with tutorials on how to spend your free time in fruitful ways. You will join them all and then ignore them completely after just a few days. You'll pull apocalyptic literature out of your bookshelves, but will soon find you don't really feel like reading it. You'll eat again. You will not sleep well. You will ask yourselves what is happening to democracy. You'll have an unstoppable online social life on Messenger, WhatsApp, Skype, Zoom. You will miss your adult children like you never have before. The realization that you have no idea when you will ever see them again will hit you like a punch in the chest. Old resentments and falling outs will seem irrelevant. You will call people you swore never to talk to ever again so that you can just ask them how they're doing. Many women will be beaten in their homes. You will wonder what is happening to all of those who can't stay home because they don't have one. You will feel vulnerable when going out shopping in the deserted streets, especially if you're a woman. You will ask yourself if this is how societies collapse. Does it really happen so fast? You'll block out these thoughts, and when you get back home, you'll eat again. You will put on weight. You'll look for online fitness training. You'll laugh. You'll laugh a lot. You'll flaunt a gallows humor you never had before. Even people who've always taken everything dead seriously will contemplate the absurdity of life, of the universe, and of it all. You will make appointments in the supermarket queue with your friends and lovers so as to briefly see them in person, all the while abiding the social distancing rules. You will count all the things that you do not need. The true nature of the people around you will be revealed with total clarity. You will have confirmations and surprises. Literati who have been omnipresent in the news will disappear. Their opinions suddenly irrelevant. Some will take refuge in rationalisms, which will be totally lacking in empathy that people will stop listening to. People whom you have overlooked instead will turn out to be reassuring, generous, reliable, pragmatic, and even clairvoyant. Those who invite you to see all this mess as an opportunity for planetary renewal will help you to put things in a larger perspective, but you will also find them terribly annoying. Nice that the planet is breathing better because of the halved CO2 emissions, but how will you pay your bills next month? Those you will not understand if witnessing the birth of a new world is more a grandiose or a miserable affair. You will play music from your windows and lawns. When you saw us singing opera from our balconies, you thought, those Italians. But we know you will sing uplifting songs to each other too. And when you blast, I Will Survive from your window, we'll watch you and nod, just like the people of Wuhan, who sung from their windows in February, nodded while watching us. Many of you will fall asleep vowing that the very first thing that you'll do as soon as lockdown is over is file for a divorce. Many children will be conceived. Your children will be schooled online. They'll be horrible nuisances. They'll give you joy. Elderly people will disobey you like rowdy teenagers, and you'll have to fight with them in order to forbid them from going out to get infected and to die. And you will try not to think about the lonely deaths inside the ICU. You'll want to cover with rose petals all medical workers' steps, and you will be told that society is united in a communal effort, that you are all in the same boat, and it will be true. This experience will change for good how you perceive yourself as an individual part of a larger whole. Class, however, will make all the difference. Being locked up in a house with a pretty garden or in an overcrowded housing project will not be the same. Nor is being able to keep on working from home or seeing your job disappear. The boat in which you'll be sailing in order to defeat the epidemic will not look the same to everyone, nor is it actually the same for everyone, and it never was. At some point, you will realize it's tough. You will be afraid. You will share your fear with your dear ones, and you will keep it to yourself so as not to burden them with it too. And you will eat again. We are in Italy, and this is what we know about your future, but it is just small-scale fortune-telling. We are very low-key seers. If we turn our gaze to the more distant future, the future which is unknown both to you and to us, we can only tell you this. When this is all over, the world won't be the same. Very poignant.
Oh, yeah.
And I really wanted to share that because I think that we've been going through a lot of emotions as a country, and we're experiencing a shared trauma at this time. And I think it's very hard for us to make sense of our own feelings about what is happening and what's going to happen, especially with regard to how we will fare. Because while we are all in the same boat in the whole world, class is going to make a huge difference. The density of the population, the level of income inequality, the level of access to care, the level of nutritious food, the kind of access to a healthy life and to a good home that you had growing up. All of those things are going to play a role in whether or not you are more susceptible to die from this virus. And for those reasons, I wanted to share these thoughts from Italy for us here in America. Now, do you remember the picture of the cat that I showed you yesterday that was wearing a mask?
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was kind of cute and funny when I showed it to you because I thought, first of all, it's really hard to get a cat to do anything, much less wear a mask. And I was just thinking, like, how did you get that mask on that cat?
Yep.
They have that saying, it's like herding cats because cats are difficult to
Very
engage in.
independent, yeah.
But apparently, there's a good reason. This picture is telling us something about the past and also about cats. Turns out cats can catch COVID. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yes. Remember that there was a tiger that tested positive? Well, felines can also get it. Cats can catch the coronavirus, a study found, prompting the World Health Organization to investigate. Cats can become infected with the new coronavirus, but dogs appear not to be vulnerable. Once again, this virus is proving to be a very good deal for dogs, but not for cats.
Dogs rule, cats drool.
And apparently, it's not just dogs. If you have pigs or chickens, they are also apparently not carriers. They are not infected. And ducks, they're not likely to catch the virus. If you're a dog, if you have dogs, chickens, pigs, and ducks, you are in luck right now.
Wow.
And it's not just cats and tigers. Also, ferrets are highly contagious for this disease. They're highly susceptible. So cats can infect each other through respiratory droplets. I guess cats can sneeze or the droplets of their air.
Yep.
And infected cats had the virus in their mouth, in their nose, and in the small intestine. Kittens exposed to the virus had massive lesions in their lungs, nose, and throat.
Whoa.
So, poor kitties, they can get this. It's important. And so one of the things that I'm seeing a lot more of, maybe we'll even see cats and dogs wearing little masks.
Yeah.
But a lot of you are wearing masks now, and I think it's really important for you to know just how to do it. So here we have Sarasota Memorial Hospital staff telling us how it's done.
I'm Jennifer Sorensen. I'm a registered nurse in our education department at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. Sarasota Memorial Hospital is adapting masking guidelines to care for our patients and protect our employees as well as the community. As many of you in the community are choosing to wear masks, we want to ensure that you are wearing them properly. Here are some important tips while wearing your mask. Never touch the outside of your mask while your mask is on your face. The mask on the outside is considered dirty. Don't pull your mask below your chin while you're wearing it and have it sitting down here. It should always be fitting properly on your face. Third thing, you don't want to have the mask dangling. You don't want it sitting like this. All of these are going to create opportunities for cross-contamination of yourself or other surfaces. I want to cover a few simple steps to keep yourself and others safe while wearing your mask. When you first go ahead and pull out a mask, we want to make sure we identify which side of the mask is the outside of the mask, because the outside of the mask, again, is dirty. Here at the hospital, we're marking the outside of the mask with our initials. For you at home, you may choose to do the same. Or you could put something like a star, some type of mark identifying that that's the outside of your mask, because you can see it's the same color on both sides. So that's going to identify that that's the outside of our mask. The second thing, whenever we're taking our mask off, we want to make sure it's put into some clean type of area. We want to store it in a clean area. Here at the hospital, we're using a paper bag. At home, you could use a paper bag as well, or you might choose to use something like a Ziploc baggie. What we don't want to do is put it in an area that's not clean. An area that's not clean would be something like our purse or our pocket. So I am going to go ahead and put my mask on. So to put my mask on, I want to pull it down, make sure it's covering under my chin, make sure it's covering my nose, and make sure it's on nice and secure. So again, I'm not going to touch the outside. I'm not going to pull it below my chin. Okay? I need to now remove my mask for whatever reason. First thing I'm going to do is clean my hands. So I'm going to perform hand hygiene. I can do that with soap and water or hand sanitizer. When I remove my mask, I'm going to do that from a clean area. So I'm going to remove my mask from the ear loops. I want to inspect this mask to make sure I can reuse it. So has my mask been compromised at all? Is it wet? Is it visibly soiled? If it is, I want to go ahead and I want to throw it away. I would then go ahead and perform hand hygiene. Wash my hands with soap and water, or again, using my hand sanitizer. If it's okay to reuse, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold over my mask. I'm going to fold it in half and folding it so the outside surfaces are touching each other. And I'm going to place it carefully into my clean storage. If it's a paper bag, I want to seal it over, so fold it over. If it's a Ziploc bag, I would go ahead and seal my Ziploc bag. Perform hand hygiene, because I still touched probably some edge of my mask that was potentially dirty. And now it's in a nice clean area. To reapply my mask, okay? So to reapply, I would probably wash my hands first, perform that hand hygiene, open up my bag. When I first go to grasp it, I want to grasp it from the ear loops. I want to look to find where is the outside of my mask. Where are those initials? Where's that mark? Because that's the outside. Putting it on by the ear loops. Okay. And trying to use the ear loops to kind of get it tucked under my chin. And then you're going to kind of need to secure it to your face. So you are touching the outside of the mask for a second. So then again, I'm going to perform hand hygiene. Wash my hands with soap and water, or again, use my hand sanitizer. And I'm ready to go. For the employees at the hospital, at the end of your shift, at the end of the day, you would remove your mask and you're going to throw it away at the end of your shift. Those are our tips for ensuring that you are utilizing proper masking guidelines. Thank you so much. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Wow, those are a lot of steps.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
you have to wash your hands 3 times. And if you touch the outside of your mask, it gets contaminated. And if you put this mask on a surface, in your pocket, in your purse, you're going to cross-contaminate. And if you put it on backwards when you go to use it again, you're going to put the contaminants right on your face.
Exactly.
So you do, if you're not washing your hands properly, you're defeating the purpose. If you're not using a mask properly, you're defeating the purpose. If you're not disposing of and wearing gloves properly, you're defeating the purpose. So it's important to understand that. It's also important to understand how the transmission of the droplets works, which is why we showed you when you're running, when you're walking, what kind of a distance you need to keep from other people. And I wanted to show you, here's a video I promised to show you of how the transmission flies. And it's incredible to see. This is done with a special camera that can see very, very small particles.
Okay.
And this is a Japanese group of scientists, filmmakers.
So how does this take place? NHK is conducting an experiment with a group of researchers.
You'll have to read anything that's on there, Duke.
Okay. So adjusting the camera.
Ready?
The team will track particles in the air using laser beams and a high-sensitivity camera. This technology allows us to detect droplets as small as 0.1 micrometers wide.
See those little particles?
Yeah.
The experiment starts. First, sneezing.
Ooh. Yuck.
You see the big droplets?
Big droplets.
We can see a large droplet about 1 millimeter in diameter. It quickly falls.
Yeah, those go down.
Slow motion.
But let's look through the high-sensitivity camera.
Bleh.
Oh, they're floating everywhere in the air. It's like dust particles.
We can see small
they go
particles that
flying
seem to
up.
glitter floating through the air.
Yeah, it does look like glitter.
These particles are all smaller than 10 micrometers, or 1/100th of a millimeter in diameter. Let's take a
Oh,
look
boy.
from a different angle.
It's a cloud.
They're small and light. You can see them drifting through the air. These are microdroplets.
It's a cloud.
It's a cloud, yes.
It's a giant cloud. You see how it moves?
We're learning that sneezing isn't the only source of these droplets.
Just talking.
バナナボートとか乗ったら楽しいですよ。
いや絶対楽しい、ね
めちゃくちゃ楽しい。僕かな
We ran the same experiment on a close-range conversation.
Wow.
People generate a lot of microdroplets when they talk
Oh my
loudly.
goodness. It's almost as much as when you sneeze.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. It looks like a little
The
fountain is coming
droplets
out of his
between
mouth.
these two stay where they are.
Wow.
They don't drift away.
They just hang in the air. You're breathing them all.
It's not yet known what volume of microdroplets leads to infection. But Tatada says we can't rule out the possibility that microdroplets have spread the virus to some extent.
そのマイクロ飛沫、小さな粒子の中にも
Microdroplets
たくさんの
carry
ですね
many viruses.
生きたウイルスがいて、大きな声での会話、
We produce them when
激
we
しい
talk
息遣い
loudly or breathe
そういった中でです
heavily.
ね、このマイクロ飛沫ができて、それが近くの人、
People
その
around
人
us
が吸い込
inhale
む
them,
こと
and
によっ
that's how the
て
virus
感染が
spreads.
広がる。そういったリスクが見え
We're
てきた
beginning
と
to
思い
see
ます。
this risk now.
The risk of infection through microdroplets becomes even greater in a closed space with poor ventilation.
Like in a car.
Oh, it's a room. Or
This
car,
lab is
yeah.
simulating the movement of microdroplets in an airtight room.
This looks like a
About
meeting
10
room.
people in an enclosed space the size of a classroom. A person coughs once
One cough.
and spreads about 100,000 droplets.
Wow.
Large droplets are shown in blue and green. Most of these fall to the ground within 1 minute. But the microdroplets, shown in red, continue to drift.
That's just the red one
This
now.
simulation uses only microdroplets. 5 minutes later. 10 minutes later.
They just keep spreading.
Wow.
Spread further and further.
20 minutes later.
Wow.
Look at that.
The microdroplets are still floating in place.
空気がよどんでいると
If the air isn't flowing, the microdroplets won't move.
マイクロ飛沫そのも
And
のは
since they can move on their own,
They can't move.
They can't move. They stay in place for some time.
長時間その場所にとどまるっていうことになります。
Yeah.
But there is a way to prevent this stagnation of microdroplets. Opening windows and increasing air circulation is believed to be effective. When you open a window, microdroplets are quickly swept away.
I see.
They're very small and light, so any airflow will get rid of them.
It takes them somewhere.
できればですね、2箇所開けて
What's
風の
important
流
is
れを
to
作ってあ
create
げるとい
two
うことが
openings.
大事。それが
This-
1時間に1回
do
でもいい
this
か
at least
ら、
once
そう
an
いうよう
hour.
なことをやることによって
Lowers the
感
risk
染
of
のリスクっていう
infection
のはかなり
considerably.
下げることができるようになるんじゃないかなというふうに思います。
Wow. That's amazing how much that can just linger in the air. So
Yes. Those of you who are listening to this on the radio, I'd encourage you to go to our YouTube channel at Duke 1517 or to our Facebook at 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead Radio. And you can then see the visuals with that video.
yeah, I mean, they kind of explained it, but it's an incredible thing. I really wanted to share it for both of our online platform and our radio listeners because it's so shocking. And I think if people could see how much micro droplets and how far that cloud is around each individual, and we could actually see the spread of the virus,
We'd all be wearing masks for sure, if you can see that.
yeah, you would be a lot more conscious of it. But what we can't see, we don't really think about. So that's why I wanted everyone to take a look at it. Also, I wanted to share with you, South Korea is finding that people might have their viruses reactivated. About 51 patients classed as having been cured in South Korea have tested positive again, the CDC said in a briefing on Monday. And rather than being infected again, the virus may have just been reactivated in those people, given that they tested positive again shortly after being released from quarantine. So that's a problem because they were released from quarantine. So if the virus was reactivated, and my guess is that more than likely than not, instead of being reactivated, it could also have been, it just didn't go away, Remember we said that the virus can live up to 37 days in a
Yeah,
person?
exactly.
So after their symptoms went away and they quarantined for the right amount of time, they could still test positive. The coronavirus, according to this, might be reactivating in people who have been cured of the illness, and this according to the Korean Center for Disease Control and Prevention. While we're putting more weight on reactivation as a possible cause, we're also conducting a comprehensive study on this. There's been many cases where a patient during treatment will test negative one day and test positive on another. A patient is deemed fully recovered when 2 tests conducted within a 24-hour interval show negative results. Fear of reinfection in recovered patients is also growing in China, where the virus first emerged last December after reports that some people tested positive again and even died from the disease the second time around after supposedly having recovered and leaving hospitals. There's little understanding of why this is happening, although some believe that the problem may lie in the inconsistency of test results. So, how are we going to move forward, reopen our economy, and get back to some kind of normal? Well, let me share with you. I'm going to read a little bit from this article in The Atlantic, in which they talk about what it is that we can expect in the future. And, as and this isn't from an article in The Atlantic that I'm going to be sharing with folks. I don't think you have a screen capture of this one, but basically this article is covering some of what the United States is going to have to do. And if you recall, if you've been watching my show, you might have heard that I showed you what they did in China, in a city where they had no new cases for several days. And what we saw that they do in China is also similar to what they're doing in South Korea and in Singapore, which is they're tracking everywhere people go. So they have technology where they're taking people's temperatures. If you go into a vehicle, if you go into the subway, if you go into an Uber, if you go into a taxi, if you're driving down the road, they have roadblocks. They're checking and stopping people and checking them. If you have any signs of a fever, boom, you go into quarantine right away. Also, all throughout the day, wherever you are, You have to scan a code to get on the subway. You scan a code. They're tracking your location as they're taking your fever. So the minute that you start showing any kind of symptoms, they notify everyone that was at that location, whether it just be subway car number, whatever, or the McDonald's on 8th Street or whatever. And then they send out an alert to everybody that was just at that location telling them you just came into contact with COVID and you need to go quarantine. And the question that I asked when I showed this, was it 2 weeks ago maybe,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
is can America do that? In China, they don't even use money. So like everybody has the ability to pay with digital money. Everybody has the ability to get tracked in this way, and people can go to work. And it is this very tight way of tracing or tracking, contact tracking as it's called, means that identifying all recent interactions of sick individuals will help determine whom they might have infected. Testing plus tracing can besiege the virus, starve it of new bodies, and also help to return the world to its pre-viral routine or something close to it. It's what they've done in several other countries. Up until now, until we can get to the point that we have a vaccine, we're going to either be going in and out of quarantine, or we're going to have to find a way of getting up to speed like these other countries.
A lot of people in the community are, talking about civil liberties. ACLU is very upset, but we're living in times of something we've never experienced. So it's like, and we've already given up a lot of our civil liberties. All the different things that Congress has done over the years have pretty much shredded your ability to have that sort of privacy and those sorts of things. I still believe in it, but also I don't believe it. This is a time to create arguments, to talk about how we are being, manipulated by our government by having to be accountable to everybody when it comes to this illness, because we need to be accountable to our community. If we are getting people sick, we have to stop that. If people are sick around us, we need to know that. We need to be advised about these things so we can all be safer. So we're giving up those rights so we can all live.
Well, this is what it would look like, okay? When they were trying to stop Ebola, the Center for Disease Control basically tracked people's information by doing interviews. They had a conversation and asked people, where do you go? The president was talking about this today, that when they find someone, they ask them, where were you? Who did you come into contact with? And that's the old-fashioned way of doing it. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to do interviews with every person that comes,
Exactly.
and people's faulty memories. And how would you remember everything you touched, everywhere
exactly.
you went? So that's just not enough. But there is a solution, and it's in your phone. It's your phone. Our cell phones and our smartphones have several means of logging all our activity. It's like just if you have a Fitbit, this is going to be like a Fitbit on steroids. It's going to track everything. GPS tracks our location. Bluetooth exchanges signals with nearby devices. In its most basic form, cell phone tracing might go something like this. If someone tests positive for COVID-19, health officials would obtain a record of that person's cell phone activity and compare it with the data emitted by other phone owners. If officials saw any GPS overlap, i.e., data showing that I went to a McDonald's hotspot, or Bluetooth hits, data showing that I came within several feet of a new patient, they could contact me and urge me to self-isolate or seek a test. So people that are working at MIT are working on an app right now that uses GPS to create maps showing the movement of people recently diagnosed with COVID-19. MIT computer scientist Roskar was quoted as saying, in an early version, you might see a map with hotspots, 2 p.m. at Starbucks, 3 p.m. at the library, and that would tell you where people with the disease had recently been. All the government has to do is demand that every test facility release the trails of infected people in an anonymous manner so that healthy people know what places to avoid. But for privacy advocates, this is not the best thing. They fear that our information may be harvested for darker purposes. It's a difficult thing, especially I think for Americans. Where do you fall on the greater surveillance and more freedom exchange? Or would you rather stay more in quarantine longer? It's a tough call. I mean, in one of those scenarios, our economy fails, and in the other one, we have more dead people.
Exactly. And like I said, it's like I'm in quarantine and I want to stay here until it's safe not to be in quarantine anymore. Or I'm not in quarantine. Well, pretty much. We're not leaving the house. We're not having any contact with any other people. We're doing all this protocol just to get our mail and to get our groceries that get delivered to us. We're fortunate enough to have services that we can access. I'm going to live that way until we don't have to live that way anymore. So for people to go out and fight and say we need to be free, I have the freedom to go out and get the virus. I have the freedom to go out and spread the virus because I live in a free country. It's like they've got to hang that stuff up for a while, and really keep this from spreading.
Well, I think that if we want to go back to reopening the economy, then we are going to have to give away some of our information. And for those, listen, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in your rights. I believe that our government has shown in the past that during national crises, like what happened after 9/11, there is a grab for more and more of our freedoms. And so we've had to exchange. I mean, I don't remember when the last time was that I flew and didn't have to take my shoes off. We've done so many things that changed our lives permanently as a result of these national emergencies that took a little bit of our freedoms away in order so that we could just continue to function. And this is no different. So I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on that, comments, where you sit, why you think that this is absolutely a horrible idea or why you think it's a good idea. What I will tell you is I think that's where we're headed, folks.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a lot of fear, especially because the Department of Justice, for example, has just sought new emergency powers during this pandemic. So here's that fear of Big Brother rearing its ugly head. And one of the requests to Congress would allow the department to petition judges to indefinitely detain people during an emergency.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's just part of it. Documents reviewed by Politico detail the department's request to lawmakers on a host of topics, including the statute of limitation, asylum, and the way court hearings are conducted. The Department of Justice also wants Congress to change the law to explicitly say that people with COVID-19 are not included among those who may apply for asylum. And they requested the same change regarding people who are subject to a presidential proclamation suspending and limiting the entry of aliens into the United States. And I think I know why. You'll hear more on that in just a moment. But first, I brought you a revealing interview from my colleague over at KVLY on the show Point of View, Chris Berg, interviewing Senator Dr. Jensen about how the Minnesota Department of Health was giving suggestions to the doctors on how to fill out death certificates. And those suggestions were very concerning because it seemed to imply that even if you don't have a positive COVID test, that you can infer when someone has died from COVID and go ahead and put that on their certificate, even if you don't have verification of it. And this kind of went viral. Well, it didn't kind of go viral. It had over 1.5 million views. A lot of people were very concerned, prompting the Department of Health in Minnesota to respond in a somewhat irked fashion to what was said by Senator Dr. Jensen, which was that he felt that there was some problematic situations that could arise from the changing of death certificates and it having some link to insurance or funding made available to hospitals during the pandemic. And the Department of Health, in the press conference that is given daily by the mayor or the governor of the state of Minnesota, they did address this. So POV gave Dr. Jensen a chance at rebuttal. Here's what he had to say.
Back with us tonight on the 702 Communications line is Minnesota Senator and Dr. Scott Jensen. Senator Jensen, thanks so much for joining us there. You heard Jan Malcolm there talk about you sowing disinformation. There's no policy or politics that would make them inflate these numbers. Your reaction?
Well, I appreciate the effort to, if you will, clarify the situation. And about an hour and a half ago, I did receive another communication from the Department of Health. And in that communication, words like accuracy and confirmed were paramount and upfront. That's a little different than what the CDC link last Friday provided, whereby it was reasonable thoughts or presuming or presumptive or probable. I think that the word has gotten out. Certification of death is a process that has to have integrity to it. The document is an inviolable document that has impact on estate planning, generations to come, insurance policy payoffs, and things like that. We can't be doing this casually and cavalierly.
So do you agree then that the new document, the new guidelines are sufficient for what you'd like to see and will correct the numbers for COVID-19 deaths?
I think the document is a clear-cut effort on Commissioner Malcolm's part to try to bring some certainty that there's going to be follow-up and accuracy in the coding. I actually listened to the press conference that you just played as well. And I think in that press conference, Commissioner Malcolm made it clear that a confirmed case of COVID-19 does not have the same status as a presumptive or probable, or I think maybe this is COVID-19. And I think that was important. And she also pointed out that there will be follow-up, and that's important. I think that what our leaders sometimes forget is people want the leaders to be successful. We're rooting for Commissioner Malcolm. We're rooting for Governor Walz. But we're also in uncharted territory, and the public trust cannot be trifled with. And so we get two basic numbers to deal with. We deal with number of cases and deaths. And we've been told over and over again, the number of cases isn't really accurate because we don't have testing. So we really don't know. So for every case that's positive, are there maybe another 10 or another 100? But we can count the deaths.
Okay.
And when we see the mayor of New York City talk about, we're going to start counting anybody that looks like they've had COVID-19, they don't have to have a confirmed case. And then we hear Governor Cuomo in New York saying the same thing. People get suspicious.
A couple more things. Commissioner Malcolm said that she would like to speak to you and sort of, I guess, clear the air, if you will. Have you spoken to her? And if so, what was the conversation like?
I called her about an hour after I got the communication from the MDH, and her voicemail was full and unable to take a message. And so I left her a text message.
Okay. Also, there was a reporter on the line because of our conversation, and you know you were on the Laura Ingraham show last night, and you had alluded to maybe there were some financial purposes or financial reasons to inflate the COVID-19 deaths. She just said at the end of that conversation there that I played for our audience, there's no policy and no politics that would cause anyone to want to inflate those numbers. What say you?
I can't buy into that. I think we're going to have hospitals shut down and potentially never open their doors again. This is serious business. We might have the big metropolitan healthcare systems getting big chunks of money from the feds, but the bottom line is your outer ring hospitals and your hospitals out in Minnesota that aren't critical access, they're at risk. So I think that I would rather have people draw their own conclusions. Let me just say this. If I admit a patient to the hospital and they're on Medicare and they have just routine pneumonia for a diagnosis, the hospital will get a lump sum payment called a DRG, and it'll be about $4,600. If I admit that same patient and I attach COVID-19 to the pneumonia diagnosis, then it goes from $4,600 to $13,000 for that admission, regardless of whether the patient's in a hospital for 3 days or 13 days. If during that hospitalization, I put the patient on a ventilator for a period of time, then the payment goes from $13,000 to $39,000. Now that's a big payment. You're not going to see many outstate hospitals get access to those kind of dollars. When you
And that is shocking. Think about,
Yeah.
and they want to say that there's no incentive, but I want to show you something from the CARES Act. This is, and I'll share this with my my online audience. This is a review of the CARES Act at kff.org on the coronavirus policy, and what it says is shocking. There's $2 trillion in coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security as part of the CARES Act. It contains a vast array of spending provisions, including an additional $100 billion for the Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund, whatever that is. This new funding is designed to provide an influx of money to hospitals and other healthcare entities responding to the coronavirus pandemic. This $100 billion averages out to about $108,000 per hospital bed in the United States. Hospitals across the country clearly need additional resources as they struggle to treat the surge of COVID-19 patients and prepare for the spike in patient load. The $100 billion fund was established to help hospitals ramp up quickly in response to new demands, giving the Secretary of Health and Human Services broad discretion over how the $100 billion fund will be distributed, although it is not clear yet how those funds would be allocated. Here's what we do know. The Secretary is to provide funding as quickly as possible, and hospitals can apply for money for a range of coronavirus-related expenses, including construction of temporary structures and medical supplies. Hospitals cannot use this funding for expenses for which they will already receive or are already seeking other reimbursement. Nonprofit and for-profit hospitals may be eligible for funds, and potentially other entities may also receive funding if they diagnose, test, or provide care for COVID-19 patients. You see why there might be an incentive to call it COVID
Exactly.
when it may not be COVID, when you haven't tested it for COVID.
And this is part of the whole stimulus package they just passed, whatever it was days ago, whatever that day was. And people are still waiting for their checks, and the hospitals are cashing in. It makes me wonder, I don't know if the article addressed that, but it makes me wonder, they're still going to seek insurance payments from people also.
This is what Valerie says. Wow. Valerie Aponte Boyley wrote into us saying, wow, it makes sense now why my father was recently intubated unnecessarily when all he needed was a BiPAP. Valerie, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of that because, unfortunately, there does seem to be a financial incentive to do it.
Wow.
And I know that there's a lot of concern over making sure that we provide the best resources, but I think that there's also some room for taking advantage of it, and that would be bad for our whole country. You know what else is bad? The fact that eggs and milk are being dumped and destroyed. Bacon, pork bellies are being rendered into lard instead of bacon. And the reason for this, folks, is because, I shared a story with you about how all of these different vegetables and fruits and vegetables are going to go to waste. They're going to be destroyed in the fields because we don't have the ability to get them to the market. We can't get them to the grocery stores. And even though grocery stores are restocking every 24 hours because things are always in short supply, farmers and food companies across America have been throttling back their production because the virus created chaos in the agricultural food supply chain, erasing sales to restaurants, hotels, and cafeterias. All of this despite the fact that grocery stores are rushing to restock their shelves. American producers are stuck with vast quantities of food they can't sell, so they're having to dump milk, throw out chicken hatching eggs, and rendering pork bellies into lard. Sad.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way they could get this food
To the people.
to the people.
Massive food distribution.
Massive food distribution to the homeless and to all of these places that need that food now would be amazing. But I'm sure that in the middle of a pandemic, it's probably a little bit difficult. A couple of the comments I wanted to get to. Sherry commented, I don't want anyone tracking my cell phone without a specific warrant for me. And you know what, Sherry? I would agree with you that most Americans do not want to be tracked or tattooed with a microchip or whatever it is that may come as a solution, that may be given to folks as a solution for tracking and stopping the virus, stopping the spread of the virus. But I also think that in some ways, technology has gotten away from us. Because let me tell you something. If you don't think that GPS towers, that expanded surveillance powers have already been in use for a decade or longer, then you've been living in under a rock. Because I'm telling you, it's already happening, especially when you're making communications internationally. There's people monitoring what you do and what you say all the time. The question now is, how much more is it going to expand during the pandemic?
Yep.
And what are we as Americans willing to give up to go out again? The Minority Humanitarian Foundation, the People for Bernie have not given up. If you didn't believe me that they never intended to finish their race, and to try to destroy the Democratic Party from within, here's more proof. This is a tweet from the People for Bernie, and they're tweeting, confusing misinformation. Bernie has not ended his campaign. He suspended it. You can and should vote for Bernie by mail. And some people respond to this. I'll just read a few of these. People for Bernie, aka get Trump reelected. Another one says, People for Bernie, lol, that's what you get. That's how you get Trump reelected. And Irish Toast tweets, this concerns me. I am a Sanders supporter. If people do not vote for the Democratic candidate, Trump has a good chance of winning. People must vote for the opposing candidate. We do not want Trump elected. Guess what? I predicted that he would do the same thing he did in 2016 and that Trump would win again. And I'm right.
Yep.
You're welcome. Now, let me show you what the Border Support Network yahoos are doing. The con artists in the Border Support Network, the COVIDiots in the Border Support Network are getting masks for their overcrowded shelters that they created all along the smuggling routes in Mexico, in Latin America, and even in the United States. The ones in Tijuana, Caritas Shelter, which you've seen Border Network News' Oscar El Blue Ramirez report about in the past, was discussed in this post by Minority Humanitarian Foundation, calling out for masks. They said, a huge thanks to Joyce and her church group for sewing all these beautiful masks for the refugees in the shelter in Tijuana. These masks will be going to the Caritas shelter, which houses men, women, and children refugees from all over Central America and Mexico. There are 138 people living at this shelter right now, and these masks will be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. I've shown you how they are giving these masks out to all of these people in these shelters. And also, I showed you how they're giving out masks to the children in the sidewalk school in Matamoros, Tamaulipas. Yes, they're still holding school for the refugee children there. No, they're not staying at home or online learning. And also, they are living in shanties, in tent cities, in close quarters without proper sewage and fuel and all of the things, social distancing, all of the things that you would definitely want to enforce during a pandemic. So I don't have any trust in that they're doing a good job. Not in their shelters in Mexico, not in their tent cities along the border, not in the shelters here in the United States. Heck, we can't even keep the flow of this virus from spreading in nursing homes. What are they going to do? And these shelters when the virus strikes and this begins to spread everywhere. Well, remember I told you for them it's a money-making business and they're not about to stop, even if they have to put the masks on their cargo so they can keep moving them north. And they're very upset that the Border Patrol and the Trump administration are shutting down all of the asylum cases at the U.S. border in order to fight the virus. Here is their post about the story in which the U.S. is expelling thousands of people from Mexico and Central America back into Mexico, and they're doing it at lightning speed. U.S. Customs and Border Protection said Thursday that nearly 10,000 Mexicans and Central Americans have been expelled to Mexico since the rule took effect on March 21st. Mark Morgan, the agency's acting commissioner, said that the changes were not about immigration. What's happening right now is a public health crisis driven by a global pandemic, which has resulted in a national emergency declared by this president to protect the health and safety of every American in this country, he told reporters. Mexico is providing critical support, agreeing to take migrants from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, who accounted for well over half of all U.S. border arrests last year. The Trump administration has offered little details on the rules, which haven't been challenged in the courts yet. The lack of specifics means the change got little attention when it went into effect on March 20th, which was the same day that President Trump announced at a news conference that the southern border was closed to all non-essential travel. The administration tapped a law allowing the head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to ban foreigners in their if their entry would create a serious danger to the spread of communicable disease. The U.S. has the most confirmed cases in the whole world by far. The CDC director, Dr. Robert Redfield, issued a 30-day order and said he might extend it. Quote, "The administration is able to do what they have always wanted to do," said Aaron Richlin-Melnick, policy counselor for the American Immigration Council, which has criticized the administration. "I don't see this slowing down," he said. Mexico said it won't take unaccompanied children and other vulnerable people. Carlos Gutierrez Gonzalez, Mexico's consul general in San Diego, said that would include people who are over 65, pregnant, or sick. Well, let's find out what it was before Bernie Sanders quit his campaign that he was saying in a video Zoom chat that he did with AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib. Here's just a tiny clip about what they were pushing for, because among these things was the decarceration, right, and mutual aid. Here's that clip.
What is extraordinary, at the same time as we see this ugly corporate greed, we see the best in people putting their lives on the line, literally, to help other people. Why don't we start off? Alexandra, what are you seeing in your community? What are people doing?
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you asked this point and you asked this question, Bernie, because there are things that we can do to make our lives better immediately. This past week, my campaign hosted an organizing call on how to set up a mutual aid network in your neighborhood. And, you know, in our city, it could be your building floor, it could be your block, it could just be your street. And what we did was that we held, we brought thousands of people onto a call and we trained people in how to set up a mutual aid network. And what that really means is how you set up a network between your neighbors in meeting and helping each other meet their needs. And all of us have needs, whether they're material, whether they're time-based, whether they're labor-based. And so right now, if you live in a building or if you live, on a block, you can make a little sign and say, "I'm here to help you out." And you can say what that help is. Or you can say, "Hey, I need some help." And and that helps us, process and really come to each other's aid without trying to just wait on Mitch McConnell to do the right thing. And so some ways that you can help each other, Some
ways that you can help each other is through mutual aid. You know what that is. That's the mutual aid that the Antifa people were talking about. That's the mutual aid that allows these disaster vultures to take advantage of you and send some criminal that has been lying to the migrants in Mexico, in Tijuana, like Laura Christina Livingston Berger, a.k.a. Lolly B, or another liar and criminal that falsely accused Kathleen Bennett and her mom and put a woman in an early grave. If this is the kind of mutual aid you want, then these are the kinds of yahoos that will be coming to knock on your door. Take a listen for yourselves.
Across Virginia, if people are calling the governor's office, if they're calling the state, they're telling them, they're saying, I need food, I need resources, I need these things. They're telling them to reach out to nonprofits. Nonprofits are a whole nother situation I'm not going to go into. And there's usually paperwork and a thing, and you've got to prove and all this. Mutual aid is, oh, you've got a hole in your roof. We can see that hole. No, we don't need paperwork. We can see the hole. We're going to fix your roof. So you're hungry. We see that. We know you're not working. Nobody's working. So here's some food. We don't make people jump through hoops to get the help and the support they need. And that's one of the most beautiful things about mutual aid.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving some of those concrete examples of how it's showing up right now with the COVID-19 crisis, and also some of the stipulations between mutual aid and the system and the nonprofit structures that exist, and how mutual aid can fill in those gaps. And right now, I think it's new for all of us who've worked in disaster relief situations to realize that this is now showing up literally in place of the mainstream system. Usually, you know.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in just a second. I just wanted to share with all of you who are tuning in right now, you're listening to A Mexican Crossing Lines on 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And the people that you just heard talking about disparaging the nonprofit world are a bunch of criminals that are being investigated by the Department of Homeland Security for being part of a smuggling operation. That would be Lolly B. And her cohort there put fake EMT / failed actress Vanessa Bolin Clemens, put a woman in an early grave and sent her daughter, an innocent woman, to jail. That's the kind of aid they provide. And what's wrong with nonprofits? Don't you like transparency? What do you suppose these people are trying to hide?
Well, they say we don't like the system, and we don't like the nonprofits either. They're part of the system. They're part of the nonprofit industrial
Even though
complex.
all of them were pushing these phony, defunct, fake nonprofits that they wanted everyone to give to during Standing Rock, now they suddenly hate them?
No, because they want the money themselves. They want to be able to skim it. They want to be able to control it. They need to fundraise it. Nonprofits are going to get in their way because they're going to take the money and actually give it to people. These people want to collect it for their own benefit.
And nonprofits are accountable to report what they receive and then to show people how they use it. Exactly. Nonprofits like yours truly, the People's Press Project that runs this community-powered radio station. But these folks don't want transparency so that they can do what they will. What did they do at Standing Rock? They kept millions of dollars for themselves. They never got to the people, the poor people, either on the Pine Ridge Reservation or at Standing Rock Reservation. They kept millions of donations that they went on to use for their activism against pipelines. They used the money that they were given to go and do disaster relief in Houston, in Florida, and in Puerto Rico so that they could get drunk and do drugs and go on binges and parties and all sorts of disgusting behaviors that hurt people, not help them. And now, during the pandemic, after the track record that these folks have, they want you to support their activities in mutual aid. And who's promoting that? Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Sandy.
Just like she promotes New Sanctuary Coalition and the people within the Border Support Network. And there's a reason. There's a reason because they're involved in activities that are not on the up and up. Let me tell you what else she's doing. AOC is busy. She's so busy. It's her re-election year. She's over at Democracy Now! Complaining about this.
One moment.
This is Democracy Now! And AOC.
Be tested well without fear of being reported to immigration authorities. This is what President Trump said.
The answer is yes, we will do those tests because I think in that case it's important. I think that if you could say illegal alien, you could say illegal immigrant, you could say whatever you want to use your definition of what you're talking about. We're all talking about the same thing. Yes, we will test that person because I think it's important that we test that person, and we don't want to send that person back into wherever we're going to be sending the person, whether it's another country or someplace else, because, we're now bringing them right out of our country. But yeah, we will test those people.
Wow. I mean, so there you have President Trump talking about, test them before you send them out. Overall, your response to President Trump, his antagonism against any kind of criticism, the well-known documented lack of tests, lack of PPE, protective gear for people who work in hospitals, and now this, saying, sure, test them before we deport them.
Well, overall, not just President Trump, but this entire administration knew what was coming. Trump knew this pandemic was coming. The military knew this pandemic was coming. The CDC knew this pandemic was coming. HHS, Health and Human Services, knew this pandemic was coming. And there was a structural, but also universal refusal to acknowledge and, more importantly, to act. And this pandemic is, and the casualties that we are seeing are, again, not just due to coronavirus. There are people dying unnecessarily. As you mentioned earlier, there are people not just dying in hospitals. In New York City alone, we are seeing 200 to 300 people dying in their homes a day. Per day in New York City, inside their homes. In addition to the hospitalizations, these numbers that you're seeing, all in all, many of them are confirmed coronavirus cases. As you mentioned, many people do not have access to tests. So a lot of these deaths that you are seeing, there are many more that are uncounted, that are being counted as pneumonia or being counted as other causes of death because those people were not able to get a COVID-19 test. And so these additional deaths, many of them are unnecessary. They are deaths of incompetence. They are deaths of science denial. They are deaths of inequality. And so it's important for us to acknowledge how unnecessary the level of crisis that we are at right now, that is due to the incompetence of this administration, that is due to the lack of responsiveness of this administration. And when it comes to the particular cruelty to undocumented immigrants, it is also a form of denial of the fact that many of these undocumented people pay taxes, they fund our public schools, and they fund the very public health system that they are being denied access to right now through the billions of dollars of taxes that they pay. Billions more, by the way, these undocumented workers pay billions more in taxes than Facebook does, than Amazon does, and than many other corporations do. And so when it comes to contributions to our public systems, they do far more than these corporations do. And it's extraordinarily important that they have safe access to our public health system. And by the way, it shouldn't just be for COVID-19 cases. Our public health system should be free at the point of service for every single person in this country. There are folks that are saying, oh, you'll get paid sick leave if it's COVID-19 related. As we're seeing with Amazon, they'll take your fever. If you don't have a test, then you will not be paid, you will not receive paid sick leave. We should have universal systems where every person can see the doctor free of charge when they need to see it so that they can get the care that they need. That is what it means to live in an advanced and modern and humane society. And so long as we don't do that, we have not earned the right to call ourselves one.
We are speaking to Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We'll be back with her.
Okay. Enough of her.
Yeah.
She doesn't make sense.
She makes up numbers all the time.
At all. She just talks out of her butt. I'm sorry. She does. It's like, what? You just said people are dying in their homes, but everyone should have equal access to health care. It's a pandemic, stupid.
Yeah.
Nobody has access to anything. We're like limited in every possible way in our access to PPE, to hospital beds, to everything. And you, what is this that you want? What is your burning desire to put the undocumented and the at the front of the line and make sure that they can get what the rest of the country isn't even able to get, what the rest of Americans aren't even able to access at this point? And of course, then there's the problem of the lie where she's saying that they don't have access to health care. I believe the president when he says everybody is going to get tested. To the degree that we have tests available, if you're showing signs, they're going to test you.
Yep.
It's because it's called public health crisis for a reason. They're not going to not test somebody just because they don't have papers. They have to test them so that we can stay safe, so they can quarantine that person. And yes, they may have to deport all those people because our system cannot handle the load. Not our legal system, not our detention facilities, we don't have the ability to do it. We're in the middle of an international emergency, and it is tone deaf to the nth degree to have her spewing these circular, stupid arguments about what they need and how they need, and just basically bashing our country while we're down, bashing our systems while we're down. If our systems are so horrible, then why are all the people from Central America, from the Border Support Network that you're trying to help bring these people here, why are they all working to bring people here if it's so terrible? Obviously, you want to make sure that this system, that this enterprise that has to do with human smuggling and trafficking of God knows only what keeps going. And let me show you how the tribes associated with the Border Support Network and with these crooked politicians that continue to push these things and fight back against our border wall, fight back against the transparency that's required. What it is they're trying to protect. Here it is. An article in BS Norrell, which is called Censored News. They're talking about the U.S. Border Patrol agents ignoring lockdown orders and stalking Tohono O'odham after agents were tested positive for coronavirus in the Tucson sector. Now, if you just read that headline all by itself, it makes it sound like COVID-ridden CBP agents are standing outside of a Native American's house on the reservation of the Tohono O'odham, waiting for them to come outside so that they can cough on them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's not the case. They've conflated two things. There are people that have tested positive in all walks of life, especially our first responders and our CBP. Unfortunately, because jerks like many of the people that are smuggling on the Tohono O'odham reservation continue to do business, which is illegal, that our CBP agents have to stop. So, yes, they're continuing to do their job during the pandemic. And unfortunately, so are the smugglers. And what this says, which I've seen in other Border Patrol news, is that these reservations, this one in particular, the Tohono O'odham, which has one of the largest land masses along the border, our southern border, of any reservation in the United States, is one of the locations of most traffic of humans and things across that border. And that over 40% of the population of the Tohono O'odham have criminal backgrounds for smuggling because they're very, very poor, because, the cartels working along the border offer them a lot of money and it's pretty hard to turn down for people that live in extreme poverty like that. Whatever the reasons that they have, they do have a lot of problems with smuggling across that border, and the Tohono O'odham are really mad. A lot of these activists within the Border Support Network are very mad that Border Control continues to do their job. In fact, they put up spy towers. They put up towers of surveillance that integrated fixed towers on the Tohono O'odham Nation that were authorized by the U.S. Homeland Security Department during the Obama administration. Elbit Systems, the Israeli defense contractor responsible for apartheid security in Palestine, they write in their article, was selected to construct the towers in O'odham communities. They targeted locations include burial places. The towers were approved by the Tohono O'odham Nation elected government in the spring of 2019 over the objections of traditional O'odham, who are struggling to protect burial places and ceremonial places. Notice something there, how they use the fact that burial places and ceremonial places are off.
Yep, sacred.
They're sacred and they're off limits. They used this excuse at Standing Rock. They've used it at different pipeline protests. They've used it in a lot of different activities in order to create this sacred space, this protected space that you cannot violate with law, with order, with surveillance, with law enforcement. And, the more that it is used as a shield, the more that these nations degrade the importance of their traditions and of their ceremonies, especially given that it is being used to protect criminal activity. So I will continue to watch and expose all of the different methods to their madness of these folks trying to game the system, especially during a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, before I leave you today, I wanted to leave you with something to think about in the future. This is a little clip of a future teacher in 2020 past the pandemic. Enjoy.
Good morning, class. My name is Mr. Reed, and I'll be your teacher for this year. We're going to go ahead and start off with roll. If you guys hear your name, just say here. If I mispronounce it, just correct me, and I'll correct it on my sheet. All right, so we have COVID with a K. Got you. We have Corona Lachey. Got you. We have Perel. All right. Virissa. Oh, Varissa. Got you. All right. We have Charmin. Oh, Charmaine. Okay, got it. Dove. Like the soap. Okay. Quarantina and Quarantino.
Oh, I like those.
All right. We have Tissue. Tissue. Got it. Pandemica. All right. We have another COVID, but this time with a C. We have Rona. And we have Carol Baskin.
Carol Baskin.
Carol Baskin.
Funny.
If you haven't seen The Tiger King, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. You got to get into it. That's all we have for you today. Thank you, you cool cats and kittens. And I hope that you can be with us on our next show here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Have a great evening, and God bless you all.